Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung. A few years ago, I was taking a walk to the park with Bobby. And now Bobby was my mate's 8-year-old son, and I was just taking care of him. And as we were walking to the park, I don't know how the conversation got to it, but I ended up asking little Bobby, what do you want to be when you grow up? And Bobby paused for a second and he looked up at me and he gave me the answer which basically every 8-year-old is probably going to give. And he said he wanted to be a footy player, he said he wanted to be a race car driver or like the motorcycle races, and he said he wanted to be a firefighter. And his answer was just so true, it was just so raw. There was no being practical, it was just pure authenticity from the soul. And as adults, we love to see this in the kids. And after answering my question, we arrived at the park and he ran off to the playground and I went to sit on the park bench. And as I was sitting down, I started to think, and it dawned on me that unfortunately, the enthusiasm that I just saw Bobby have, I feel like it's got a shelf life, like an expiration date. Sooner or later, he's just going to become like all of us adults. He's going to think, be practical, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an engineer. Choose something secure and ideally high paying. And why does it have to be this way? And as I saw him going down the slide, the answers started to come to me. It's because as adults, subconsciously, we realize that the greater our imagination, the greater the possibilities, then the greater our risk for failure. And to minimize our risk for failure, we minimize our imagination. If this is the case, then why is it as adults, why do we not burst their bubble? We allow kids to keep imagining, to keep dreaming, to keep believing in magic. Why is it that we allow them to believe in things like Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy? For years, I didn't know the answer to this, but then I started to realize and think, when an adult sees a child's unfiltered imagination and their belief in magic, it subconsciously resonates with a part of themselves that they lost long ago. A divine part of themselves, their inner child, their higher self. William Wordsworth once exclaimed in the poem that the child is the father of man. And the way that I interpret this is that there is a lot of things that we as adults can learn from children. I believe that the inner child is the unfiltered expression of ourselves, our true selves, which has been overshadowed by our ego. It's something that we have lost, a divine part of ourselves that must once again be found. And this is what I think Carl Jung means when he wrote that the first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it. And when I think about this quote, I can't help but draw a correlation between this and what society deems as a midlife crisis. Now there's that phenomena, there's that archetype that adults go through life ticking all the boxes, then one day they wake up and they realize that they're unfulfilled, that they're bitter at life and they don't know why. And the reason for that is because that which is repressed will always seek outward expression. Ignoring your inner child or your higher self will only go so far. You cannot keep sweeping it under the rug. You cannot keep running away from yourself. And this is what happened to me. So in the summer of 2018, I just graduated from a Bachelor of Engineering. And instead of being overwhelmed with happiness, I came to the haunting realization that I was an NPC. And if you don't know what an NPC is, it basically means non-playable character. So it's like those background characters in a video game. And I realized that I was an NPC and I was a bot because I was just doing what society wanted me to do. I realized that I was just doing engineering so I can impress society and my parents. So my ego ended up shattering and I ended up having a crisis. Alan Watts once said, finding out who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be. And so what I learned from this was that the process of letting go of the old, which is the known, to make way for the new, which is the unknown, is the archetypal idea of death and rebirth. The path to your higher self involves letting go of the known. Letting go of the known involves a voluntary descent into the chaos. Here's where you explore the shadow, where psychologically your ego has thrown your inner child away from the light of your conscious awareness. We must find our true selves again by exploring through the darkness. This is the dark night of the soul. And this is what Carl Jung means when he says, in order to know the light, we must first experience the darkness. So I ended up going soul searching. I went monk mode, deleted social media, started meditating, even went to a different country just to go hiking and be in nature. And in my solitude, up in the mountains, I rediscovered this part of myself, my inner self, my higher self. And this is when I remember the conversation I had with Bobby when I asked him, what do you want to do with your life? And I decided to ask myself the same question. And a few days later, after I flew back home, I got out my journal and I was writing so enthusiastically about all the things which I wanted to do and all the things which I wanted to be. And I thought to myself that this is going to be the start of a new life. But what I came to realize is that it's not that simple. Like, maybe you can relate, but have you ever had those moments where you're very excited to start something new? So for instance, maybe you want to start a new project or you want to start a new diet. Sort of like how people set goals at the beginning of January and then a few months down the track, they've lost all motivation. Well, that's exactly what happened to me for years. Even though after I discovered my higher self and my higher purpose, I was still not taking steps towards the goals which I've written for myself. And I was getting so annoyed at myself because I was thinking, if this is really what my higher self wants, then why am I procrastinating? Why am I not taking steps forward? And it made me think, why is it that every time we try to change, there's a force pushing us back trying to make us remain the same? Why is it that instead of being a conscious creator to our lives, we find ourselves as unconscious passengers? And these unanswered questions haunted me for months, even years. But luckily I ended up coming across this book called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, and he labels this phenomena which I've just described as resistance. And he says that the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel towards pursuing it. When I read this book and when I came across these powerful quotes, things just clicked and I began to realize that this was actually normal. This is part of the journey towards pursuing your higher self. And I was stagnant for months or even for years because I didn't understand what resistance was. And after reading this book, I ended up picking up my journal again and seeing all the goals and the dreams which I've written down when I was in a state of motivation, a state of belief. And one of the goals actually was to be a writer or to be a speaker. Basically doing what I'm doing right now. Basically writing down my script and making a video out of it. And when I read this goal again, I felt a tremendous amount of resistance. But at the same time, I've got a new understanding now, realizing that this is my North Star. And luckily as well, the stars aligned, and at the same time, I read this book called The Alchemist. And essentially the story goes is that there's this boy named Santiago, and he has this dream of wanting to see the pyramids one day. And he goes through this entire journey of trials and tribulations, and I was completely immersed in this story. And it made me think, but this is only a fictional tale. How can it have such a big impact on me? And upon reflection, I think it's because stories are powerful because they capture what it means to be human. Stories serve to act as a mirror to show us parts of ourselves that we do not know or have forgotten. So after being inspired by this book, I finally decided to just go out there and start my YouTube channel, which I started in mid of 2022. And I had a tremendous amount of fear and resistance for uploading my first video, but after a few uploads, I was getting the hang of it and I was starting to enjoy it, and I was thinking, yeah, this is what I actually want to do. And then I returned to this book and I realized one of my favorite quotes, which is, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. So I was thinking to myself, if this is what I really want, if I really want to just keep making videos, then I trust that the universe is going to help me. So at the beginning of 2023, I was like, you know what? I'm going to quit my full-time job. I'm going to get a part-time job so I can spend more time on YouTube. And while it's a bit of a sacrifice of making a lot less money, I really believe that this is the path that I'm supposed to be on, that it's going to work out. And I set myself the goal of getting 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And so I continued my journey, I kept uploading videos, but in September, I ended up reaching a dark place because when I looked at the stats, I realized how far away I was from my goal. My YouTube channel has not been growing for the past 6 to 8 months, and I've just been completely stagnant despite trying and uploading and still showing up. And I was thinking to myself, where's the universe now? Why isn't it helping me? I've been stagnant for so long. This is what I've truly wanted. I've tried to show to the universe my commitment to this goal by quitting my job. Then why am I stagnant? Why am I not going anywhere? And this was a very dark place for me last month in September because I started to feel the true power of the shadow of self-doubt. I started to ask myself, maybe chasing dreams is for others and not for me. Maybe I shouldn't have quit my engineering job. When I look around, everybody else in my life is making progress and I'm not. And in this dark place, I realized that I was in the hero's journey. I thought that the hero's journey was just a one-time thing. I thought it was a one and done. But what I came to realize is that the hero's journey is an archetypal pattern which will always be playing out in your life. Every new endeavor and every new adventure requires a reformation of your character. A letting go of who you were to make way for who you can be. And this is the most difficult part of the journey, facing your own darkness and to voluntarily undergo a psychological death and rebirth. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. It's as Carl Jung says, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And when I came across this quote, when I came across these realizations, it became strikingly clear to me. Throughout this entire year, I have not been taking the necessary time to pause and reflect and to journal, to ask myself, how can I improve, or who do I need to become in order to achieve my goals? I was basically avoiding the dark side of the hero's journey. The reason why I didn't ask myself this question because I was afraid of change, because to change requires me to face my own inadequacies and my own failures. And when I was in this darkness, I felt quite ashamed of myself for being so stagnant for the past 6 to 8 months. You know, how can I be so blind? And when I sat with this question for a while, it made me think back to Bobby. Bobby who was at the playground, who was bold and he was brave. Bobby who would jump off the slide instead of sliding down it. Bobby who would hang off the monkey bars with his legs upside down. And I asked myself, why was Bobby so fearless? And here's what I think. Kids have not yet developed a shadow. The older we become, the more hurt, pain, and life experiences we go through, the larger our shadow becomes. And the larger our shadow, the more we have to integrate to become a more holistic individual. So what I decided was just to voluntarily just go into the darkness, to make a descent into the chaos and to confront the shadow and to see what was there. And yeah, boy, I see a lot of insecurities and fears which was just repressed away. And I'm just going to be completely honest here, but what I found there was that my biggest insecurity was to be perceived by the world as a man who is incompetent and who is a failure. And I think that the reason I was afraid to journal was because I was afraid of confronting this part of myself which was incompetent, which was failing. And it reminds me of what Jordan Peterson says. He says that the fool is the precursor to the savior. If you're going to go out and do something new, you're going to have to be willing to be a fool. And if you're not willing to be a fool, you're not going to try anything new. And if you don't try anything new, then you're just going to remain stagnant and remain where you are. And that's what happened to me. I was afraid of asking myself, how can I improve? How can I improve my next video? How can I improve as a person? I was afraid of the journaling. Your level of success will never exceed your level of personal development. And it's strikingly apparent here because I've been going nowhere with this channel. And ultimately the lesson I learned is that to be humble and to accept your own human frailties is the true meaning of self-love. If you run away from who you currently are, you are running away from who you can be. And that's why I've just decided to be open about my failures and open about what I've been going through on this journey. Before, I thought being a YouTuber was about showing up, having it all figured out, to hold the facade in front of the audience that everything is all in well, to appear that I have all the answers and that I have it all together. But what I realized is that this isn't the way that life works. And one of the biggest lessons which I've learned from this whole journey so far is this. When you strive towards a goal, it not only builds your character, but it exposes it. Life is a never-ending journey of self-discovery. There is no destination. So after encountering, this dark period, once again, of the hero's journey, I was actually pretty down and I said to myself, I did try my best and I gave it a shot and it didn't work. Maybe I should stop trying to pursue this and just try to pursue something else, because by the looks of it, I've been making zero progress for months and there's no guarantee for success in this road. And with all these self-doubts and all these questions, my higher self gave me an answer, and the answer is best represented in this following quote. One can choose to go back towards safety or forward towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again. Fear must be overcome again and again. If you enjoyed this video and you resonated with it and you're on your own journey towards pursuing your higher self, and if you want some help and clarity on your own journey and you want to bounce some ideas off me, then I'd love to connect with you. I've set up a Calendly link down below if you wanted to book in a time to have a chat. And also, since for years I've been struggling with this higher self path, I decided to make a free higher self worksheet which you guys can work on, link down in the description below. And I think this will really help for people who are trying to gain clarity in what they want to do in their life and how to move forward. So yeah, again, link down in the description below if you're interested, if you want to download it. And if you liked this video, can you please give it a thumbs up? Really goes a long way in helping this channel grow. And as always, see you guys in the next video. Peace.